Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. We're going to talk about yesterday's, we won't call it a rally, we'll call it a meeting. It certainly wasn't a rally, it certainly wasn't a massive march, but it was, it did throw up a few interesting things, and we'll just take a look at them. And certainly by way of numbers was one thing. And then Hamza Yousaf comes up and says something quite remarkable. And it is probably an area that he thought he was being very clever at. But as soon as you look at the facts, you realise, yeah, I would have kept my mouth shut if I were you, mate. But hey, he doesn't keep his mouth shut. He insists on advertising. How very stupid he completely is. So we'll have a look at this, and we'll say about all these very sad people who turn up and they have this message, "We believe in Scotland." It's, you know, you don't need to believe in it. It's real. It exists, you know. It's not, you know, Scotland isn't a matter of faith. It's a matter of fact. But, you know, they're not very bright, are they? Bless them. Anyway, we'll take a look at this and see what's going on and see why these very dim people are quite incapable, incidentally, of counting. Here goes. Now, when I say they're incapable of counting, I mean both in terms of the estimate they said of the crowd, but also in terms of money and how they think that they'd be much better off without being part of the union. But we will look at this, and it is just these people are utterly deluded. You can't get away from the fact that they are absolutely bonkers. They really do believe the things they say. And I think it's so sad, all those years of free education, and it pours out people as stupid as this. Goes to show the problems with Scotland's schools, doesn't it? Anyway, Hamza Yousaf says Scotland is suffering from a cost of union crisis. See what he did there? Not a cost of living, a cost of union crisis. Well, we'll soon put this right in, you know, and hopefully he'll learn. But anyway, here's the picture, and this is them. Walking down the road, and they've got a big sign saying, "Believe in Scotland, because if you believe hard enough, it may exist." What's wrong with them? Do they not realise where they're standing? Scotland's real. Don't need to pretend in it. You know, doesn't waft out of the mist every 100 years. It's not Brigadoon. Anyway, Humza Yousaf has said Scotland is suffering from a cost of union crisis, as he said he aimed to be the first minister who would deliver independence. And it seems, of course, he's doomed to misery and failure yet again, because there's no chance on this good earth that he can absolutely do that. The SNP leader, now we're going to be laughing here, right? Ready? The SNP leader was speaking to thousands of Yes supporters outside Holyrood at a rally organised by Believe in Scotland and Yes for EU, who claimed a crowd of 25,000. Well, reports vary. But people who've come back to me and given me information suggest that nearly, you know, well, let's just say that of that 25,000, if you took a naught off the end, that would be nearer the truth. It wasn't a crowd of 25,000. It was a gathering of about 2,000 or so. And indeed, if you look at that, thing there, you can see that's not 25,000, and that's been taken deliberately by his people from such a low angle that it looks like there's a big crowd. It's just a wide crowd. It doesn't go back very far, does it? You can tell, and indeed you can tell from how far back the flags don't go. They sort of stop about there if I move the mouse. That's probably the last flag, which is about 1, 2, 3 houses down. Maybe 25,000, my arse. Anyway, First Minister was also heckled during his 15-minute speech, and I just wish that there was a certain chap was there. I wish Ian was there, Ian Ferguson. He would have heckled them slightly better, because we know how good he is at heckling Humza Yousaf with the immortal words of "fuck off." But, you know, it wasn't there. It wasn't to be. But anyway, a man in the crowd shouting, "How do we get there?" And, well, it's impossible. He's just not going to get there. Mr. Yousaf said independence was not a sideshow. Well, it clearly is, because it's never going to happen. It is a minority view. He said, and the fundamental ingredient in the success of a host of European nations of similar size to Scotland. Yes, but they're entirely different. He said, if it works for them with all the talent and resources and wealth that we have, then why not with Scotland? Why not our nation? Well, they, of course, have one advantage that Scotland doesn't have. And it's a very major advantage, of course. They don't have the SNP in power. And that, of course, is the main thing. That is the main reason why they are more successful. They don't have a bunch of morons who are incapable of thinking beyond the next meal. We stand here, he said, in front of our nation's parliament. Why? We stand here to rededicate ourselves to that cause, the cause of independence, the cause of the losing side, the minority side. He says, my God, the people of the country need it now more than they've ever needed before. Well, his God, but obviously not the rest of them's God, because the most of the people in that crowd will be Christian, which obviously isn't his God. Completely different God. Because his God doesn't have a son, whereas the Christian God does. And so therefore they cannot be the same God. So he's saying that his God wants independence, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else's God needs independence. You see the problem. You see the problem, of course, by his God. He absolutely means Allah. We believe in independence because this unequal union has caused so much suffering and harm. Yes, this unequal union. This union that the Scottish people begged for after Darien. This union that has led to many Scottish people becoming senior ministers in Westminster, prime ministers in Westminster. And indeed, with the marriage of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon to George VI being part of the royal family. It's the Stuart way back, really, isn't it? And of course, when you look at the influence that Scots have in Britain as a whole, in UK as a whole, by their influence in Westminster, it outweighs the very numbers of people. Now, you give that up and you go and join the EU. How powerful do you think your voice is then? It isn't. It will be a church mouse squeaking in a cathedral. Nobody will pay attention. He says, we believe in independence because this unequal union has caused so much suffering and harm. To whom? Not to you. Without it, you'd be very, very poor indeed. Let's face it, 60% of the NHS costs in Scotland are paid for by Westminster. Scotland only pays and raises 40% of the cost of the NHS in Scotland. Imagine how bad, think how bad the NHS in Scotland is now. And imagine what it's going to be like when 60% of that funding has gone. And he says that it's a terrible cost of the union. Good luck. And, of course, think about defence. Who's paying for that? Good luck. There's so much. And this man cannot understand it. Or if he does, he chooses to ignore it because it doesn't sit well with his weird political views. He says, let me tell you, the people of this country are not suffering from a cost of living crisis. Yes, they are. How can he deny that? He says they're not. Well, that's great. Thank you. So he's saying they're not suffering from a cost of living crisis. They're suffering from a cost of union crisis. Fine. So next time he says, this cost of living crisis, and he mentions the cost of living crisis, you can quote that and said, no, he said they're not suffering from a cost of living crisis. The man's a fuckwit. I cannot tell people enough about how stupid this man is. And this is why I ask people to subscribe to my channel and to spread these by liking these videos. Because this is how stupid the man is. He opens himself up to quotes like that, knowing that next time he stands up in Holyrood and goes, there's a cost of living crisis, someone else will stand up and say, hang on, Hamza, you said the other day that the people of this country aren't suffering from a cost of living crisis. Which is it? Were you lying then or are you lying now? Honestly, fuckwits, a lot of them. Anyway, he added, our job is to inspire. Oh, he does. He inspires a lot of people. He inspires a lot of people to vote Labour, Tory and Lib Dem. And not just to point out the failings of a miserable Westminster government. Well, no, let's point out the failings of a miserable Holyrood government instead. He says, we want to inspire people to give them a reason for vote for independence. Well, how about then, if you want to give them a real reason for independence, how about fixing the NHS? How How about fixing the education system? How about fixing communications? How about fixing social care? How about fixing the biggest number of drug deaths in Europe? How about fixing the greatest and worst, almost the worst, alcohol problem in Europe? All these things you've got complete control of. 16 years, and that's how bad it is. So if you really want to convince people that independence is good, fix them and show people that you can deal with the problems. Because what you're doing is creating a third world failed state deliberately, and we've covered that this morning, how they're deliberately increasing homelessness amongst other things. They're deliberately going out and destroying industrial sector by industrial sector by industrial sector. Deliberately destroying a scorched earth policy so that they can look at Scotland and say, look how terrible it is, it must be the union, while promising this utopia ahead if people just vote for independence. It's exactly the same as what Mr. H did in the 30s when he pointed and made everything bad and said it's the Jews. And look, if you vote and we become a socialist, national socialist state, we will live in a utopia. Of course, Hamza Yousaf is no different. He says, speaking to the media later, he was asked what he meant by the cost of union. He said all the suffering that people are having to endure at the moment, the cost of living crisis. He's just said there wasn't a cost of living crisis. The high energy bills, which is caused by Ukraine and the oil and the gas fields of Russia. Whether it's any impact of austerity over the past 13 years. I think he meant 16 years. We have to remind people that independence is the answer. It's the answer if you want to live in an even more depressed and worse state than you're currently living. He said it's the antidote to that. What? It's the antidote to what? To happiness? It's the antidote to future for your children? It's the antidote to actually having an NHS? The man is bonkers, isn't he? He says if we have powers in our own hands, like you've had for 16 years, we wouldn't have cruel Westminster policies foisted upon us. What? Like the policy of stopping gender recognition? The policy of funding your NHS? The policy of paying for your national defence? Oh yes, terrible, terrible things indeed. Asked if he could be the first minister who delivers the independence, Mr. Yousaf said, that's certainly the aim, certainly the hope. There's no shortcut to independence. There's no pathway to independence. There's no way it's going to happen because the majority of Scots are quite well aware that independence is a non-starter. It is absolutely impossible. And certainly for a bunch of extremist, Marxist, hate-filled bigots that wear a yellow rosette. He says we've got to try and create the conditions to make it impossible for them to ignore. Oh, you've done that. You've made it impossible to ignore the damage that the SNP has caused. He says the only way we can do that is by mobilising the power of the people. Well, you are. People are constantly voting to retain the union. Asked about the heckler's question, how do we get there? He said, Plan A can you continue to be a demand of a referendum, which he knows isn't coming. By mobilising the power of the people, and the next opportunity to test that would be through a general election. I can't wait for the general election when his lot lose 20, 22, 25 seats. That will give him the answer he's looking for. He's saying this general election will prove people will want independence, and then his party will lose over half their seats. And that, of course, will be the answer when it's like 75% of people don't vote for the SNP. That will be the answer that he's looking for. And then at that point, the SNP need to just give it up because they'll realise that they're never going to get independence. SNP Independence Minister Jamie Hebburn on $120,000 a year. Thank you very much for no reason whatsoever. And Scottish Green Minister Lorna Jeffrey Slater. Also, Jeffrey, I don't know, she's probably on the same $100,000 a year. And what has she done for it? Now, at least her role exists, but she's failed at it. Time for her to go back to the veldt, where she can go and sit and munch on the green leaves at the top of the trees with her incredibly long neck. Anyway, she spoke at the 90-minute event, which was preceded by a march from Edinburgh Castle. Stroll. It wasn't a march. Now, even this, look, they're claiming that's 25,000 people. Carefully selected shot. Quick, everybody, huddle around, hold all the flags. But you can see there, where the mouse is. That's green fields, mate. That is not people. That is not 25,000. I don't think there's maybe 1,000 people in that shot. 20,000, 25,000, my arse. Anyway, the Scots Greens co-leader said, every day when I'm at work, I'm asking, what the hell am I doing here? Does it make any difference? And should I not just piss off back to Canada? Oh no, that's not what she said. What she said is what we can do to make things fairer. How can we make sure... Well, if you want to make things fairer, resign. How can we make sure more people get a living wage? Resign. And how can we do more for the climate? Oh, definitely resign. I'm told we can't do that. Those powers are not devolved. Yes, they are. How do you make people have a living wage? Quite easy. Stop taxing them more than anyone else. What can we do for the climate? Stop damaging it with your terrible policies that involve digging up 15 million trees to put in a set of bird choppers. She said, I'm told we can't do that, the powers are devolved. And that's before Westminster began rolling back the powers that our Parliament has and disrespecting this Scottish Parliament. They don't disrespect the Scottish Parliament. They're protecting the people of Scotland. There's a hell of a difference, and if you don't see that, then you're a moron. Oh, no, wait. They're pushing back on the work we're doing for equalities. No, they're not. They're ensuring they remain. They're ensuring that women are treated equally and not relegated to third persons, to non-people, to being dehumanised, which is what the Greens want. Tory MSP Donald Cameron said, Humza Yousaf needs to realise he is the First Minister to Scotland, not for the SNP, and his appearance at this independence rally shows his top priority is to push for another divisive referendum. People across Scotland will be infuriated that the First Minister attended this march and believes that separating our country is more important than helping households through the global cost of living crisis and fixing our broken NHS and crumbling schools. Humza Yousaf continues to be completely out of touch with public opinion and, I would suggest, reality. And people are rightly seeing through his reckless behaviour. He is transparent in one way only. He's full of shit and everyone can see it. I'm coming up. I do love the fact that Humza Yousaf is so deluded he actually believes the words that pour out of his mouth. I mean, they're utter crap, aren't they? They're utter BS. From breakfast to supper, you know, soup to nuts, the whole thing. Utter rubbish. Beyond a motor of a doubt. And 25,000 people out. No. Just no. And as I say, several other people have commented on this and said to me, and somebody said to me the other day, yesterday afternoon, he said, I was walking past, he said, they're claiming huge numbers. Let me tell you, there's not. There's barely anyone there. He said, I stood and they walked past me and it took them about 60 seconds to walk past. That's not 25,000 people. They're utter liars, aren't they? They can't help themselves. It's the SNP. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you very much for watching. That was a bit of a long one. So if you've made it to the end and you like this video, then you need to hit that subscribe button. And if you've made it to the end and you don't like this video, I salute you. You're a masochist. Either way, thank you very much. But do hit the subscribe button. Leave a like. Leave a comment. Please share the video. And until next time, stay safe. Stay well. And remember, we're 987 days now until Humza Yousaf is gone. And we just can't wait. Bye.